How you guys doing today? My name is Randall Avery. This is another episode of Building Wealth and Mental Health. We have our guest today, Mr. Robin Thompson. He comes from a different angle. I usually have therapists on, but he actually works with therapists, helping them grow their practice, do things to make their life a lot easier. So welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Everything's good. So before we start off, can you explain about what you do and how you help therapists in their practice?
Sure. So I have a very particular model. I'm not a therapist myself. I'm actually married to somebody who trained as a clinical psychologist, but for me, I do have a lot of knowledge in mental health because I've been working with therapists for a number of years. I'm actually a marketer, and what I help all kinds of mental health professionals to do is to launch a coaching, training, or consulting program using a different model. Because the whole problem that therapists have is they're time limited, they're income limited, and frankly, they're tired and burned out. And the reason that they are all of these things is because they're stuck in a model where they're required to trade time for money. And so, what I teach them how to do is to create what's called a high ticket coaching program. So, these are coaching programs that are sold to middle class people and above. They're worried well. It's a non-clinical psychoeducational intervention. So it's not like a clinical service treating trauma. And what it consists of is a program where you're giving daily support to a group of people. You're serving your entire group within one community and within one set of twice weekly, for example, coaching calls. And you're selling the service at a premium because what you're doing is fixing a premium problem. And so this allows you to go from working all these clinical hours to having a successful program where you're doing a little bit of marketing, you're doing a little bit of enrollment, and you're doing coaching within this container that doesn't require you to work an hour, to bill an hour, and to see everybody individually. And this is what's giving therapists a lot of time back and a lot of energy back while allowing them to actually impact more people's lives.
I like that. And I hear that a lot from my clients. They're wore out. Therapy is a taxing profession, especially one-on-one practicing. So how did you come up with this? And how did you think this would be or apply well to therapists and counselors?
Well, it's been a model that's been around for at least 10 years, about 14 years, more accurately. And it started off with the big life coaches out there like Tony Robbins and these kinds of folks all launching programs. And it really then caught like wildfire. And you had a lot of people coming into the industry and becoming life coaches. And this is the predominant model. I mean, one-to-one coaching does exist, but the predominant model is to run a program. Now, what started happening is because coaching doesn't have the same barriers to entry, you don't need to have any kind of certification to coach. There was a lot of people who really started flooding into the market and running coaching programs, becoming highly successful, and, growing big followings. But what was happening there was a lot of unqualified life coaches, people with no trauma awareness, no trauma training, no foundation in mental health, and they would take a coaching certification that's basically amounts to CBT except done badly, right? And then they would go out and they would present their services to the world. And what I was involved in a company where there was certainly more awareness of that. We weren't just helping any Tom, Dick, or Harry. I mean, we were certainly working with people who were more competent, but I was seeing a lot of things happening in the industry around me as we were growing this major coaching brand up to 15 million. And at the same time, I met the woman who's now my wife. She's a clinical psychologist. And I started to look at how clinical psychologists and mental health professionals work versus how I was working with a company that was helping all these life coaches to develop their practice using this group-based model. And I was thinking, wait a minute, why aren't there more mental health professionals leading the coaching space? They should be. Why aren't they? And so I really started to look at that question, and I started to realize that in school, mental health professionals get no sales, marketing, entrepreneurship, or business training in any way, shape, or form. And they might have 3 degrees, and they've invested over 100 grand in their education. And so many of them effectively become entrepreneurs with their own practice with no training at all, which is insane. And so I started to look at And so basically that means that they're not really given the awareness that there's other models and other ways to work out there. Nobody's teaching them that. And so I started to look a little deeper and I was like, why is nobody teaching this? And so I started to understand that there's a whole industry, starting with the insurance companies, the big mental health agencies, and now we have these sweatshop therapy apps, the BetterHelp and all these other ones. It's like trying to turn therapists into Uber drivers, paying them $25 an hour, and I'm starting to look at the motivations, even also the student loan companies. I'm starting to look at the motivations for why therapists are working the way they are and why the industry developed the way it did. And it's like therapists have been given this little box to work in by the business world. And so long as they stay inside that box and behave themselves, then they make a lot of money for all these companies, right? The minute they step outside of that box and empower themselves to do something different, instantly they stop making money for the business world and they start making more money for themselves. You see? And so I started to look at how this developed and why it developed. And most certainly there are therapists whose absolute sweet spot is dealing with trauma or serving the underserved or, working in the clinical model and only working in the clinical model. And that's exactly where they should stay because that's just who they are. But there's other types of therapists where that model is literally killing them and they need to have options. And so that's when I decided to myself, well, I'm no longer feeling like I want to be in the coaching industry, just helping anybody who comes to me get their business up and running. I didn't feel aligned with that anymore because I've really seen too much as what happens when you put powerful marketing tools into the hands of somebody who doesn't actually know what they're talking about, but thinks they do. And they just project themselves all over their clients. So I just said to myself, I'm only going to focus on mental health professionals and helping them to create coaching programs. And then it quickly developed from coaching to also training programs and then also to consulting programs because the opportunity to do any of these three things is really very similar. And the process to do it is very similar. It just depends on what you want to teach and who you want to serve, you see. So that's how I got here. It was really through learning and seeing a lot of things in the industry, figuring out who's really competent and why they're not in the coaching industry, or not many of them are, and then starting to put these two things together and noticing an opportunity to do a lot of good, you see.
That's interesting because I think you've heard the same thing throughout college. It's been hammered into these therapists and psychologists' head that you're probably not going to make a lot of money. So they almost turn that function of their brain off or don't open their eyes to different possibilities. And I think what you're doing is a beautiful thing. There are a lot of individuals who haven't spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on understanding people and trauma, who are making a lot of money that these individuals who are actual experts and people who are referencing them are making that money. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's actually deeper than that. I mean, I get, because I run ads on social media for therapists talking about the coaching model and the training and the consulting model, I get like abuse from some therapists. I get these DMs, I get these comments like, we're not supposed to be about the money. But at the same time, my response is, well, all the companies around you in this industry are, and they're screwing you. And so you have to sort of understand that and what can be underneath there if you really want to get into it with some of the people who like feel so triggered by the fact that I exist that they're sending me these messages and putting these comments and doing these things instead of just them deciding who they want to focus on. Is there's also a lot of savior complex that's going on, and there's a lot of hidden money issues. The therapist has like self-worth issues where like it's almost like the industry conditions them to this point where they have to be the servant in order to feel like a good person, and then screws them over repeatedly once they're in that position. And like I said, there's certainly some people who should be doing that kind of work because that's clearly their purpose and they're very happy and they never burn out and they're always just, good at doing what they're doing. But for other people, being in that dynamic is very unhealthy. And for some of them, they get so triggered by my existence that you can see there's a bunch of issues they have to work through with their own self-worth and financial worth. And once they get over that, it opens up a whole world of options to them and different ways to work. And these are the kinds of people that will then come to you with the kind of attitude like, I want to build, as opposed to the kind of attitude like, can you save me? You see what I mean?
I like that. And I think if there can be a nonprofit person who specializes in getting donations, I think you're the flip side of the coin on the profit side, helping somebody sustain a great business. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. And at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, people get helped. And I
Yeah.
think there's different solutions for different things. My question
And
is,
okay.
when should therapists and counselors begin being exposed for those who want to be profit seeking to kind of the work that you're doing? Is it during postdoc programs? Is it going a little bit out of into a private practice? When is it appropriate to begin learning about some of the tools that you teach your therapist?
It's a good question. There's actually a discussion in the comments underneath one of my ads right now from pre-license and therapists in school who are actually saying, as I go through school, I'm starting to see what's out there,
Yeah.
or as I'm starting to work to get my hours, I'm starting to see what this is like. And I think I'm not going to get licensed. So you have to be careful because if you go into the schools and teach this thing, the schools are going to be worried because they're creating a bunch of therapists who don't want to get licensed, they want to do something else. You see, I think that probably what you want to do, it's a good question, is to have some classes on how to start your own practice in very early. And I also think that see, the whole thing is like a lot of people who come out of school get put into what I call a supervision bind, where they have to work underpaid in an agency for a period of years to get their hours in exchange for free supervision because they've got crippling student loans they have to start paying, and they need to get their hours and they can't get their hours. I firmly believe that if you give therapists who are in school a little bit of training on marketing their practice, on what makes people actually reach out to them, on these key fundamentals, because honestly, the coaching companies that teach how to market your practice, they're teaching such basic marketing. This can be covered in less than a semester. Okay, less than a semester. Then you're going to get some therapists who come out of school and find their own private supervision and start getting their own clients and marketing their practices well. And whether they want to take insurance or not is up to them. They may have some self-paid clients if they know how to market their practice as well. And what that's going to do is start to tip the scales a little bit in the industry and help more therapists to start from a better place and grow from there. And when that happens, because I hear all these people saying, oh, therapists need to unionize against all these companies. It's not going to happen. It's going to take 10 years. You're going to spin your wheels for 10 years. Nothing's going to change. But if therapists actually just start taking their power back, whether it's with a model like mine, or whether it's just with their own practice, but doing it earlier, coming out of school, getting private supervision, and taking more of a business risk to get a bigger reward, then I think that tips the scales in the industry away from some of the big therapy apps and things like this that are starting to try and gobble people up and keep them down. And as a result, the dynamic with these companies will change. And it's kind of like what's happening in nursing right now. Right, 20% of nurses quit. I think, is it 20? It might have been more during the pandemic. All of a sudden, the hospitals are finding more money to pay them to come back. I mean, it's just uncanny how all of a sudden this money appears when people don't want to play the game anymore. And so the therapists, when they do that, then you'll find that the insurance companies will fight harder. You'll
Mhm.
find that the therapy apps will all of a sudden wake up and say, hey, wait a minute, we have a proper talent problem here. We've got demand, but we've got nobody who wants to work with us. And that starts to change the dynamic in the industry. That I think you're completely right. More business training in school would definitely help with that. You see?
I think that's a great idea, and it's so amazing that I've had clients almost same, discipline, same target market. Some make 70,000, some make 300,000.
Yeah.
And I think there has, and this is why I have these conversations. I think there has to be a reconciliation. I don't think making $70,000 is wrong. I don't think making $300,000 wrong.
Right.
I just think people need to make the best decision for themselves.
Yes, exactly. And not be conditioned or just shown that the only decision they can make is to eat a shit sandwich every day, basically.
Yes, yes. So let's talk a little bit about your background. How did you become, I guess, the marketing expert? Give me
Mhm.
your journey to gathering the knowledge that you need that you're sharing with your therapist today.
Sure. So, I mean, I've been in digital marketing since 2001.
Mm,
And so very, very early on, I helped to grow a social network. It was long before Facebook or Instagram or even Friendster or MySpace or any of the first stuff. So early that we didn't even have running a simple banner ad
mhm,
on a website was a complex thing to negotiate and do. I mean, it was way, way, way back then that we
mhm,
helped to create that. It was during the dot-com boom. And then after that, I spent some time owning consulting or as a partner in consulting companies. And we were doing things in digital marketing. And then we were also doing some anti-fraud work for some big companies, which involved analyzing digital marketing and looking for, things that were out of integrity. And so as I was working in there, somebody actually came and worked for me. And we lost touch for years and we got back in touch. And I was on my own personal development journey. I mean, when you reach a certain age, you start to want to get into personal development. And I did. And she was a life coach by this point, but not just like a regular life coach. She was helping people write books that help to create a business because, you start with the book and your message and create a business. And she basically said, Robin, I know you know digital marketing. I know that she knew digital marketing. She said, I don't have time to focus on this particular area of my business. I'm too busy serving my clients. I want you to help me to grow this company. And we grew one of the biggest brands in coaching. We grew it from $200,000 a year up to $15 million a year in revenue in just a few years. And we were serving all of these successful coaches, helping them to come out of nowhere, get their book out, and to create a coaching business, you see? And so through doing that, I mean, you spend millions and millions of dollars promoting different offers in the coaching scene and watching a whole bunch of people start their businesses, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And so I've just seen so much that by the time 2020 came around and I made this decision just to focus on working with mental health professionals to do this, that I just had a wealth of experience that I brought in, and it was very easy for me to get started. And then just the learning process with the therapist was learning how to get through certain areas of thinking
mhm.
because therapists are mostly generalists. They can do so much. And so when they try to design a coaching program, they try to design a program for everybody that's based on their assessment of what people need. And the biggest gap that I have to fill or to help them with is how to niche down to one particular kind of problem that they're focusing on solving, and then how to market to people in their current state of mind where sometimes what people think they need to solve that problem is not what the therapist knows they actually need. And so I have to try and bring that all together so it's actually an offer that's going to sell so the therapist can actually give them what they actually need. And so that's been like the evolution of the skills.
What have you seen worked with your clients? What niches have shown to give positive results given the way you market
Sure.
to the public?
So most coaching programs that sell at high ticket, and I'm not talking about $100 online courses, I'm talking about over $2,000. There needs to be a painful problem.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the old vitamin versus painkiller advice. If you're selling a vitamin, you can sell a painkiller for more money than you can sell a vitamin, basically. And so it has to be a painful top of mind problem. It needs to be time sensitive. It needs to be solved right now. People,
Mhm,
this is like their Monday morning problem. This is one of the biggest problems they have in their lives.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
And there's a big payoff to solving it, and there's a big cost to not solving it. So where does that really apply? Well, parenting's a great one because people are in a lot of pain when their child is off the rails. You see, so we've helped a number of different parenting programs get created. Marriage and divorce, trying to avoid divorce. We've seen some traction in divorce from a narcissist. It really depends on who you serve, what niche you're serving in there, because a very disempowered niche that can't afford anything, but there's also working women in that niche who are trying to pick up and move forwards. You see, and you can tailor towards them. We've seen training programs, so teaching a skill. Like Dr. Laverne, she has a program she has a program for other therapists where she's teaching them to become diversity counselors or diversity trainers. And Kate has a program helping social workers start their businesses. And then we've had other programs for church members, teaching church members how to give spiritual help with more mental health awareness, you see. And then coaching programs, the consulting programs then tend to focus on business problems. So your employees are very burned out. There's low morale, or you have to provide some kind of mental health assistance or programs for companies. And I'm not talking about EAPs, which are kind of just there for when it's already too late, essentially. I'm talking about kind of mental fitness programs. And so you can go into companies that have a high staff turnover and sell in there. And so we've seen some traction there as well. And there's a lot of other examples that I can take you through. We've had one person who did a program for teenagers with functional neurological disorder. And it was sort of like, they have a lot of symptoms and the medical industry can't help. We've had programs for people with chronic illness. We've had programs for people with burnout at a professional level, you see. Burnout due to perfectionism was one that we actually helped to launch. We've had all the Resilient Caregivers Lifeline, Darcy, one of my favorite programs. She actually helps caregivers to give help to the person, it's a sick or dying person who's in their home, not like professional caregivers. And she's really teaching them how to do it well, you see. And so it's really what it is it's trying to find that painful problem, you see. And when you find that painful problem, then you can craft a solution to it and present it within a coaching framework so that somebody can make very rapid progress inside of a coaching program, because coaching programs are daily. You're serving the whole group on a daily basis. And so it allows people to get very rapid results, you see.
And I think what's fascinating about what you're saying is a lot of individuals who are doing those tests today are not doctors. They don't have their master's in psychology or mental health, and they're providing that information almost secondhand from research that they do. But in this model, we actually are getting the information from the horse's mouth, from individuals who studied that year after year. And
Yeah.
I think that list of opportunities, and I'm sure there's many more, is deep. And I think the key thing is, what is the pain point? And also, it sounds like for companies, sometimes it's what is the risk of my profitability point? And those are interesting, especially with people.
Yeah,
Now,
and it has to be a non-clinical psychoeducational intervention. So that's one thing that's confusing for mental health professionals. Some of them are already aware, like, what about my license? I can't do coaching and take people from out of state with an active license.
yeah.
And then others have ideas. They don't realize that they have ideas. They come to me and they're like, I'm going to do a program for trauma. And I have to tell them, look, trauma's in the DSM. And whether it's a coaching program or clinical therapy, it's the same. If you take somebody from out of state, you're putting yourself at risk. And so it also has to be a non-clinical psychoeducational intervention. Like, parenting, even we have one program we help launch for parents of children with anxiety. It's the kid who has anxiety. There's no clinical relationship with the kid. It's you're educating the parents. So it's psychoeducational, you see? So you also have that particular layer that you have to add in if you're a mental health professional. You have every right to have a coaching program if you're a mental health professional. There's nothing to say that you can't. It's just that you can't touch certain subjects, where the weird thing is somebody with absolutely no qualifications can legally do a trauma coaching program, which is incredibly dangerous. But a mental health professional cannot, you see.
I got you. That's good. That's good information. Now, there's some things that you kind of specialize in as well. I think you mentioned this earlier, but I would like for you to elaborate on a little bit more. Understand the trade-off of time and money. When therapists go in, they're thinking, this is the model that I have to do. This is what the person who coached me or supervised me did. So this is the process that has worked for years past. Explain the fallacy or how therapists should be thinking about trading time with money today.
Well, let's say that you're billing insurance. Let's be generous. You're getting $100 an hour. Okay. And your actual physical capacity is 25 clinical hours a week. Okay, so 25 times 100, $2,500 per week. Pay for your office, pay for your insurance, pay for your expenses, pay your student loans, pay for your accountant, pay for all the other things, right? That's your income limit. Just that's it right there. So you got two options. Go into self-pay. Okay, now you can go to $5,000 a week. Right? If you're charging 200 an hour, sometimes have to be in New York City or somewhere like that to try and get that amount. It's not, you have to be able to fetch it. And a lot of people, it takes them 20 or 25 years to be able to grow their way out of that because they don't know how to market to it. And so, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, thousands of hours to get licensed. And then you're like, somebody with a business degree can make more than that in just a few years. You see, that's kind of like the outlook. That's just the numbers, the way they work, because you're working 1 hour to receive payment for 1 hour, right? And then you're adding your notes and your billing and your marketing and your intakes and all that other stuff on top of it, right? So in order for you to be able to exceed that, you cannot be in a model where you're working an hour to bill an hour. You see? So you got a few options. You could grow a private practice into like hiring multiple therapists and you becoming a business owner. Now, again, you're taught zero skills on how to do that in school. But essentially what it starts out as is it's a second job. So you're trying to make the money you need to make right now. And then you have to start hiring people, getting them clients, keeping them, establishing everything it takes to create a practice where you have all these employees and start to build up, right? I mean, sometimes you'll do deals with the state or places like that to get a whole bunch of referral sources of people coming in. But essentially, you have to learn how to do that. Then you have to learn how to hire, you have to learn how to fire, and you have the problem of doing this in such a style that you don't just become like a stepping stone for young therapists where they come, they work for you for a little while, they build up a client roster, then they decide that the model sucks, they want to have their own practice, they leave, half your clients go with them, and then you have to start again. That's the disadvantage of it. Some people are built for that journey and they do great with it. Mm-hmm. But most people are not. And I've seen a lot of people really spin their wheels for years and just end up in a worse state. You see, that's one option. So I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying that it's hard. I'm saying that there are some people who are built to do it and there are some people who aren't. Or there's the people who just like to be solo. They don't want to have a whole bunch of employees or things that they're building. They're better suited to starting something like a coaching, training, or consulting model, you see?
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
On a side question, I've seen people do kind of like an ensemble practice, have therapists under them, and there is a cap on how much they can grow. I think you alluded to, therapists to break off and join your ensemble might want to do their own practice, things of that nature. Do you have an opinion on why firms of that structure only grow but so large?
Well, for each level that you get to, you have to have stable source of clients coming in. You have to have a stable process for hiring people and retaining them. Yeah. And then you need to have the layers of operations you're going to need for billing, for customer care, or for answering the phone. And so you have to keep those plates spinning. And the bigger it gets, the more of a corporate operator you have to become. And I certainly know some people who have 7-figure practices this way. But what they did was they have deals with pretty major operations who are sending them a lot of clients. There's no discrimination in who they take on or what niche they're in. It's just volumes of people coming and then volumes of therapists to serve that people. And honestly, the quality goes down when you're doing that. You see, you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard consistently. To keep a quality of care, to master niche, that doesn't exist in a large practice.
No, it's a numbers game. It's like how many people can I hire and what can I sell them for per hour? That is essentially the business you're in at that point. Once you reach that level and that size, and so you have to be like a business person who is comfortable with that and doesn't mind the compromises you have to make in the quality of care for sure.
Now, because you're a marketing expert, I really want to get the hearers and the listeners their head around what things cost.
Uh-huh.
So I want to start a private practice. What
Okay.
should I be spending on marketing? And let's do it at different levels. I have a half a client book load. I have a full client book load. Now I want to start maybe private coaching, or maybe I need to do that at the beginning point. Kind of, can you do like the life cycle of marketing spend for a typical therapist or an example of a therapist?
The good question, it varies a lot based on how much you do yourself and how well you do it yourself. And also where you live.
Mhm.
Because let's say you're a therapist in the city. There are some therapists who can fill their practice just with a well-written Psychology Today profile and Google Maps. There are some therapists who can do that. For other therapists, that will fail miserably. And so, what I would say is find if you're going to do that model, find the easiest way to take insurance. I think Alma and platforms like that can get you up pretty quickly. And then, try with just local marketing. Google Maps. Why Google Maps and Apple Maps? Because it shows up in your local area. When somebody searches for the word therapist, you're going to show up not just on the left-hand side of the results, but also in the maps results. And it's a good way to shortcut SEO. Um, Probably what you have to do is have a very pragmatic view. I mean, you're going to have a lot of people telling you this is what you have to buy from me to build your practice. And you're going to have SEO specialists. Understand that SEO takes a long time and it's a gamble. That's the best way to understand it. The most common thing that I've heard, and there's definitely companies out there who specialize in doing this. There are people who are able to grow through Google Ads,
Yeah.
and that's also, frankly, hit and miss as well. But I know a lot of people have made it work. There are companies like Zealot Lopez, the Vita system. She owns a company which is actually does a good job for a good price in helping mental health professionals to get their practices, their therapy practices up and running, and gives them a lot of insight into the business side, I would say.
Do you
There's
mind
also
sharing some of the ticker prices potentially of some of these things? Like how much should they be spending on Google Ads? What have you seen, I guess, work?
Sure. Well, with Google Ads, because you're selling by the hour,
Mhm.
doesn't make sense to spend more than 1 hour's worth of income per client you actually get through the door to pay you. So you won't make money on the first session with them, but what you're doing is you're going to make money on subsequent sessions. That would be a model for hourly therapy with Google Ads. I do not believe that spending money. So I was talking to somebody last night who spent 7 grand on a Facebook ads course in order to grow a therapy practice. And I was telling him that is never going to work. And he confirmed it didn't work. What worked for him was Google Ads, you see? Because if you look at Facebook, you shouldn't spend any money there because, like, Facebook is kind of like going to the mall to meet your friends and you see a lot of marketing and advertising messages around you, right? And then, something might catch your eye and you walk into the store and you browse, and in that store is a complicated marketing process to get you to buy something, right? That doesn't really work for therapy. It works for coaching, but it doesn't work for therapy. Google is like a high purchase intent. Somebody searches therapist on Google, they're looking to call and hire a therapist. So you're better off spending your money there if it's one-to-one therapy that you're selling. You see, and it's either going to work or it's not, frankly, because I get people who tell me it built their whole practice, and I've helped people to do it and it's built their whole practice. And I've also had people tell me that it didn't work for them based on the area that they were in. But that should be the kind of metric. I wouldn't spend $300 to acquire a customer through Google Ads if I was selling something for $100 an hour,
Mhm.
because you have to do the 3 sessions to get your money back. The relationship has to work out and go a lot longer for you to be in the red. No, just spend about an hour. If you can't do it for less than an hour's worth of revenue, like $100 on Google to get a client who then stays with you for X number of sessions, and you have to monitor these, let's say 5 or 6 or 10 sessions or something like that. That's a business model you can probably use to grow a practice and get the energy moving. And then at some point, you'll turn off the Google ads because you won't need them anymore. You see? Um, in terms of buying mentorship, mentorship programs in this market range from like 3,000 up to 10,000
Mhm.
to get a practice started. And you just have to be ready to lose that money in but it's a calculated risk on getting something that's going to make you that much or more per month. That's just the basic thing to look for. If somebody's selling you something for $500, don't expect any support. It's just going to be a self-study course. You probably won't do it all. You probably get lost and have a million questions, you know. So that, 3,000 to 10,000 is a good amount to spend on mentorship. If you need mentorship, marketing mentorship, that's what you should expect.
How patient should somebody be with these, either marketing or with the coach? Like, because it's tough dealing out that much money,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're coming from a therapist area where you weren't making a lot of money. So every
Mm-hmm.
dollar does count. So how do you feel
There's no
about being?
magic. It's not
Yeah.
magic. It is you're learning a skill. And for some people who are lucky, they start making money very quickly. For other people, you're going to have to work these skills for a few months to see a return on investment. I think it's the same for anybody going into any business. I mean, let's say you want to open a store. How long does your store stay in the red before it goes into the black? The answer is a long time, you know? So you have to be prepared for that. But it's better than having a job once you have it running. And so you have to understand that, you are an entrepreneur, whether you want to be or not. And what you're taking is a calculated risk where you're going to invest some money. And let's say you make, in the course of 5 years, three significant investments in mentorship: one to help you grow your practice, one to help you to get into coaching, training, or consulting, create some other stream of income, or one to help you grow a group practice. Expect like two of them to pay off, something like that. If you make good choices, expect about two of them to pay off. Don't expect everything to pay off. And that's a realistic way to look at growing anything. You
Yeah.
see, I don't like magical thinking. I hate those programs that are out there that are saying things like, we're going to get you up to $50,000 a month or you don't pay. In fact, I did a YouTube where I actually ran through the contract from one of these coaching companies and I showed you how impossible it is to actually get your money back. So anybody who makes that kind of claim, what they're trying to do is sell magical thinking. And you have to understand that, there's something wrong with you if you buy from somebody like that, because what you're doing is you're trying to buy some easy answer that doesn't exist. You see, anybody who puts a guarantee like that in front of me, I would never buy from, because I instantly do not take them seriously. You see? So understand that when you're making an investment, you made an investment in a good school, right? 100,000 or 80,000 or 120,000, however much you spent on getting fully educated, right? You made that was you were young, but you made a calculated decision based on the results of that school, who you're going to learn with. It was a serious thing. Take the same type of approach with who you get mentorship from, you see? And if somebody's just trying to sell you on a bunch of like, hey, just do this, it's easy, then ignore them. These people are probably not very good at what they do, and they are too afraid to tell you that what you're doing is starting a new business and it's going to take effort and consistency to pull it off. And if they're too afraid to tell you that, nothing else that they say is true. It's just and so it's kind of like that. I mean, it's amazing to me because therapists, they understand so much of this, but you kind of need to remind them of it, because they have such knowledge of it. You kind of need to remind them of it, in how they make decisions, and then when they do, then when you actually say stuff like what I'm saying, people like therapists usually say, "Oh, okay, this guy." They recognize the truth, they respect the truth, and then that's who they come to. You see, that makes sense.
It does. It does. Now, what if a therapist is in the mindset and they listen to you or they listen to something else and say, coaching is an angle I want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Online course is something that speaks to me.
Okay.
How should they prepare for that to engage with somebody like yourself? What can they expect along the journey? So once they're in the journey, like, oh yeah, I remember Robin speaking about that. This is what is supposed to happen.
So, First off, coaching and online course are actually very different things. So an online course is like there's no support. It costs about one or two hundred bucks, or $300 or something like that. And that's what they're selling. They're selling information. And the problem with that business is because a lot of mental health professionals get taken in by a message where people are saying, if you have an online course, it's passive income. You will make money while you sleep.
Mm.
Not true. The reality of actually promoting an online course is if you're selling something for two or $300, let's say you're selling it for $200, you want to make $15,000 a month. Let's do the numbers right now because it's a pretty simple calculation. So $15,000 a month divided by 200. So you have to sell 75 units at 200, right? But the reality is to sell 75 units a month, how are you going to do that? You're going to make a Facebook post every few days? No, that's not going to work. You're going to have constant positive pressure from advertising in the market to actually make actually make those kinds of sales. So your ad cost, let's say it's 150. So all of a sudden you got $50 in profit per sale of your online course. Divide 15,000 by 50. You have to sell 300 of these per month. So now you're going to need a marketer who knows how to sell 300 units and keep your cost so there's enough profit there. You're going to need to pay for the marketer. You're going to need to pay for customer service because when you have 300 new people buying your course each month, trust me, there's quite a bit of customer service that you're going to have to do coming in. You got your chargebacks, you got your refunds, you got all these kinds of things. You start to complicate the model, you see? So when you're selling something at that level, understand that you have to be a pretty crack marketer and you'll make the course once and then your entire day is going to be spent on marketing, which for a therapist is like, why, I didn't get into this to work on numbers and look at Facebook ad interfaces and all these kinds of things. You see what I mean? And so understand what you're getting into when you do an online course. A coaching program is at least 2,000, preferably over 2,500, right? And your numbers should be, if you're using ads, you want to spend like what, $800 or something on ads to make that sale. So you have a decent amount, and then you're going to support the heck out of the people in your program. You have far less people in the program that you're supporting. You're doing coaching calls twice a week for your group. You're doing support in an online community every business day, and so it's a different business, but it's a better model when you're bringing in, you'd rather sell 5 people or 6 people per month rather than 300, right? And so it's a better model for that from that perspective. What was the rest of the question though? I just caught on that and I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So let's say they're going on the coaching journey, not the online course. Like as they're building that business, what should they be expect to feel? What are some of the doubts that go in their mind? I'm
Yeah.
sure you've experienced that a lot.
Well, there's regular freakouts. There's the freak out before you decide to do it. There's
Mm-hmm.
the freak out that's going to come when we're starting to develop your offer and we start doing market research and you see that there are other people out there doing something very similar. And some of them are really nice design and really buttoned down. And you start thinking, oh my goodness, this is intimidating. The next freak out comes when you prepare the actual content in your course and you're like, oh my God, I'm really doing this. I'm really going to teach this. Is this good enough? Will people realize, will people latch onto it? And then the next freak out comes right before you launch. And when you're getting ready to actually start promoting and putting yourself out there, and it's time to come up from under the invisibility cloak, as my old CEO used to call it, and actually put yourself out there. And for that, it's just what you have to do is understand that the cure for fear is not trying to create some false sense of safety around you. Like, I don't know, a lot of people, they do things like, I see mental health professionals getting coaching certifications in order to sell a coaching program and other insanity like that. They create a whole bunch of busy work and things like this. You have to just recognize that this is fear that's going to come up. It's always going to come up right before you're ready to break through to a new level. And so the cure for fear is not safety. It's cure for fear is bravery. And so you have to feel the fear and decide to go forwards anyway. You see? And those are regular freakouts, or if you want to call it, I mean, there's no DSM for imposter syndrome, but that's a common and popular word. You can call it that too. And understand it's just going to be there. and I mean, I used to hate the idea of putting myself out on YouTube. I would avoid it. I would find other things to do miraculously rather than that. There's just sometimes you have to force yourself to do things, and then all of a sudden it becomes easy after you've done it a few times, or the first time somebody makes a negative comment on your social media, and you take it personally. And then after a while you realize that the negative comments, you either delete them or you use them to make your actual case stronger, because when people read the negative comment and then your response, then your whole ad and all your social media actually gets way, way stronger, you see.
Definitely, definitely. All right. Well, this has been really informative. If there's one piece of advice, let's say somebody just finishing their postdoc program, getting their first job, or going out into private practice, what advice, as far as a mindset going into their career, would you provide them?
Sure. See it as progression, see it as stages. So, like, if somebody's just come out of their postdoc, they're in supervision, or they're just coming out of supervision, they have very little money. Actually, usually the right answer for them is to build a stable, albeit low income, doing clinical therapy,
Yeah.
so they can pay their rent, pay their bills, and then don't spend it all. Take a little bit of money and get ready to invest in the next phase of your career, because you are an entrepreneur. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to think about it that way or not, you're going to be an entrepreneur your whole life. And so keep a little bit to invest in the next stage of growth once you reach that place. I usually, when somebody comes to me and says, I have no regular monthly income, can you help me launch a coaching program? I usually say, go and get a regular income, so you're covering your bills. Then we're going to do this, you see? So see it as a series of stages. Also, never get into that victim mentality where you're like, the industry conditions are so bad, this is just how it is. And I just have to grin and bear it, because you will see breakout therapists who don't think that way and don't let that poison their mind. And you have to understand that a lot of this is what you create. You're creating constantly. You're creating something from nothing constantly. And there are ways to have a self-paid practice. There are ways to have a coaching, training, or consulting program. There are ways to create other streams of income that will grow you, so long as you keep your mind open to that and know that you might not have all the answers, but at the right time, you're going to have the money available, you're going to have the will available to do it, and you're not going to know exactly how it's going to work out or how you're going to do it at the beginning, but you're just going to say, I'm ready to take this next step into the unknown. And if you can habituate every little period of time, taking the next step and the next step and the next step, you're going to be a better therapist. No matter what you do, you're going to be a stronger person, and you're going to end up having those kinds of results where other people are looking at you like, how did she do that, or how did he do that?
I love
That's what I
that.
would say.
I love it. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Robin Thompson. This has been a great interview. You shared a lot of golden nuggets that I think a lot of people need to take to heart, especially starting off your career. But even somebody who's experienced, extremely profitable, I think there's something in there for them. So thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
Let's go, Uncle Money.